Bring in Cody Roark here from Locked On Broncos here in 1 sec, and he can help us determine if Russell Wilson could be a better option than Deshaun Watson. But first, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app has spreads, player props, over-unders, and much, much more. And the best part, it is simple and easy to use. So visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to kick off the NFL season. That is FanDuel.com/UCSS. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL, an official partner of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And with that, let's welcome in Cody Roark of Locked On Broncos, who knows a little something about Russell Wilson, maybe more than Tyvis, who played with Russell. So what's up, Cody? Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, Cody. How are you, man? Thanks for joining us. I don't know how much you heard of our debate. We've been talking about who would you rather have going forward, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. I'm obviously in the minority here. I'm sure 95% of our fans would take Deshaun Watson.
86% YouTube chat, over 1,000.
What percent?
86.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I get it. And obviously everybody else on the show would take Deshaun Watson. My point is the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson to win a Super Bowl now, and Russell Wilson would give him a better chance. Number one, he's healthy right now, and Watson's not. I think Wilson would give him a better chance the next year or two. I don't know. What do you say? What's your take as a Broncos guy?
Well, it's tough to say because I think when you look at both of these players, like in the last year, both players and the contracts, the trades that happened for them have been discussed as two of the worst trades in NFL history, considering what was given up versus what they've gotten from it. I think a lot of that was a big question for Russ coming into this season. What is he going to look like under Sean Payton? He's been decisively better so far this season. He's got one of the best touchdown-interception ratios right now in the NFL. And the big part of this team's struggles early on in the season, the defense was giving up ridiculous amounts of yards on the ground. They were giving up a lot of points, explosive plays, and Russ and the offense were playing pickup. They're trying to catch up. And when you're down by 2 scores, you have to get a little desperate there. And Russ's numbers have been good. He facilitated, obviously, that comeback drive against the Bears in week 4 there. But, I look at the Browns as well. Just the experience with Deshaun Watson hasn't been what they've wanted it to do. And look, I think a lot of his struggles coming in and his first game action with the Browns, he hadn't played football in quite some time. It's been a while. And then you factor in injuries. He's never really had a chance to get his feet underneath him. So, I don't know who would be in a better situation. I think overall Russ has been healthier than Deshaun has been. You pair him up with that Browns defense right now with Myles Garrett, former Bronco Shelby Harris, and obviously those guys on the back end of that secondary. They're playing really well with Ward and obviously Delpit, Thornhill's there, and then obviously Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think Russ would have a lot of success in the Cleveland Browns offense, but who knows? That's a great question. I think for the fans, I think the fans will definitely have their preference as to who they want, but I don't know. It's a tough situation to be in because I know Deshaun at one point, before everything had come out about him, was linked as a potential guy going to Denver before everything had happened with Russ. So, it's crazy how both these teams' situations have played out.
Cody, right before the trade deadline, there was a whole bunch of talk about the Broncos selling the team. They had given up probably one of the worst, most points in games. The team just looked like they was going down. And for some odd way, they've turned it around and been able to pull off 4 straight wins. What has led to that? What are you seeing?
No, it's been crazy. If you would have asked me they were going to be 1-4, and all of a sudden we're sitting here, they're 5-5, and that they would have beaten the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Minnesota Vikings, who started off the season 0-4, and they went on a 5-game win streak of their own, I'd have been like, no, you're crazy. I think the biggest thing for Denver, they've made some changes, right? After that Miami Dolphins game, you give up over 700 yards of offense in one game. You give up 70 points, you lose by 50. It's embarrassing. That hasn't happened in the modern era here. And at that point, you have to have gut check time. You have to have some really hard conversations. And that's what Sean Payton told us. He said that he had hard conversations with players. They've made personnel changes overall. Now, a little bit of context here. When Vance Joseph was hired as the defensive coordinator this offseason, one of the things that he was asked to do was to run Vic Fangio's defense because that was what the Broncos defense was running under him, under Giro Evero last year. And the defense was having a lot of success under that. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. The problem with that is you're asking a defensive coordinator who's never called that type of defense before to call the defense that he's never called. So what we're now seeing, and part of the shift is Denver's made some personnel changes. At the nickel, they've moved Jaquan McMillan, who's forced a turnover in 3 straight games, for the Broncos. He's been a huge surprise for them. They've made some additional changes. Well, sometimes they'll alternate between the 3-4 and the 4-3. They'll add Drew Sanders, rookie linebacker, alongside Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton. But mainly on the defensive line where they were getting gashed, they have Mike Purcell and DJ Jones starting next to Zach Allen. And then you have Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper at outside linebacker. And they got rid of Randy Gregory. They got rid of Frank Clark. And they've made these widespread personnel changes, and they're paying off. And Justin Simmons obviously was missing some games early on in the season due to injury. He's been back. That's been part of it. So they're showing the Fangio looks, but they're calling Vance Joseph's actual defense that he has historically run. So that's been a big part of their recent success so far in the last 4 weeks.
Early in the season, Sean Payton, obviously got into a little bit of back and forth with, the New York Jets and different things like that. And probably wish he probably wouldn't have said those things. How has he settled in a little bit? He came out and he had those splashy words to say. And I think that may have been a little bit of a distraction as well. But how has he kind of reevaluated what he needs to do and the temperament he needs to have with the Broncos that has kind of turned things around?
Well, after that interview had released, we thought that was like an off-the-record conversation that somehow got published, but no, it wasn't. He had a couple of lattes in him, as he had said, and he expressed regret. He said, I shouldn't have said that. He said, I talk to the players all the time about not being a distraction, not putting things out there, and here I am putting things out there and doing that. So, he had to take that one on the chin. And obviously when the Jets won, that was a big win for them. But more so, it just kind of put those comments into perspective. It was a little bit of an ugly day for Denver in week 5 there, considering that. But, I think that's something you have to live with. You make that decision. You do something. You got to live with the consequences of it. But Sean Payton has been in complete and total control of the entire operation for what the Broncos do in their day-to-day, from how practice is run, from media availability, from everything like that. Really, it's just trying to get these guys to buy in. And one thing I've talked to with various players inside the locker room, they said really after those losses and the early stretch of the season, they had a gut check moment where they just said, you know what, it's just all about the guys in this locker room. We can't focus on what the media is saying locally or nationally. We can't focus on what the fan base is saying. We know what we can do. We know the potential that we have, and they've kind of bonded together, and they've stuck with it, and it's paid off for them, but they're going to have to find a way to sustain that. They can't do it doing the same things that they have been. Defensively, they've been better. They've been on the trajectory, but offensively, they've been really trying to get the run game going. It's going to be hard against Myles Garrett and that defensive line this upcoming Sunday.
It seemed like Javante Williams is finally back to the guy he was maybe at the first half of last year before his injury. And it seems like the other guys, whether it's P. Ryan or I forget the other.
McLaughlin.
It seems like he's fully taking. I know P. Ryan had played a lot at the end last week when he had a bunch of catches. But is he now is he back to being the bell cow guy there?
Yeah, Javante is. He's fully healthy coming off the ACL, which was good. He had a quad injury early on in the season, but he's been able to kind of work his way back into it, and he looks good. He feels good, and I think that's one of the things we're seeing him run with the physicality he ran with previously his rookie season, going into his second season before he tore his ACL, and so now he's got that confidence. But, Sean Payton and the Broncos, they really trust Javante and Samaje Perine in the 2-minute drill. And obviously, as we've seen, Samaje emerge as a little bit of a pass-catching threat out of the backfield because teams are really trying to take away Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. And so when the defense does that, okay, dump it off to Samaje Perine, who's demonstrated elusiveness after the catch and has been a reliable guy in their last 2 drives that they've had against the Buffalo Bills to come back and win, and obviously this past week against the Minnesota Vikings. So it's just a little bit of balance between them. And then Jaleel McLaughlin, he's just this explosive, flash-in-the-pan guy. He's not going to get a lot of looks during a game, but when you expect him to get, when he's on the field, expect him to get the football because he's so fast, can get upfield north-south, and then he can get behind a defense if there's an open hole. So he struggled the last couple of weeks, though, but the run game is the big emphasis for Denver going forward, and it's opening things up for Russell Wilson and the passing offense as well.
Cody, you got to watch the Browns a little bit last week, obviously with the new quarterback DTR in there, and you got to see how that offense looked against Pittsburgh. Is there anything that you saw that could be concerning for Denver, or do you think Denver should be able to shut down this Browns offense given what it's seen last week?
It's going to be tough because I think the allure is when everyone talks about a rookie quarterback or a young guy like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, everyone's thinking like, okay, hey, he's a young guy. That means he's not going to, he's going to struggle. That's not always the case, right? And I think for DTR, he's got the capability. He's an unknown, right? So there's a chance that, he could struggle, or there's a chance that he could go out there and light it up. I mean, that's how the NFL is. We've seen it. Look at Tommy DeVito in New York. For the first couple of weeks, he looked awful, and all of a sudden he lights it up this past week. So you can never overlook anybody because of their experience in the NFL. I think one of Denver's biggest keys is to stop the run game for obviously Cleveland, obviously Kareem Hunt, Jerome Ford. They got to find a way to stop the bleeding in the run defense where they've given up over 170 yards in the last 2 games. If they can try to limit a little bit of that Browns rushing offense this week and maybe try to pressure and fluster a little bit of DTR, I like the matchup of Amari Cooper versus Patrick Surtain. I think that's going to be must-see TV. You got Bama versus Bama. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. Denver, I think the bigger question for them defensively this week, who's going to start at safety? Is P.J. Locke going to be back now that Kareem Jackson's been suspended for 4 games this season? Or is it going to be Delarian Turner-Yell, who has struggled when he's been placed into the lineup? To me, that's a huge key. But I think for the Broncos, trying to get a pass rush on DTR, if they are stopping the run game, is probably going to be paramount for them if they want to try to come away with a victory on Sunday.
The thing that stands out to me is the fact that, some of your numbers are, mid to below in terms of defensive numbers. But one number that stands out with me, and has been one big thing, is the takeaways. You look at that Buffalo Bills game. That game, I watched that game from start to end. Able to get turnovers and able to win that football game. Again, with the Minnesota Vikings, able to get turnovers early on in the game, set the tone. How have they been able to kind of, get turnovers, but, give up some yards here or there? Is it a bend but don't break type thing with the Broncos?
It kind of has been. To be honest with you, it's been crazy to see. Like, for example, if you talk about maybe like the last 3 weeks after that Buffalo game, in 3 weeks, they forced 12 total takeaways in that span of 3 weeks against, obviously, you talk about the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Bills. I mean, it's incredible to be able to do that, and it's hard to do that. But I think guys are trusting their technique. They're in position. They're rallying to the football. Guys are holding up, a ball carry on first contact. Other guys are coming over to rip the ball out. I mean, they're very disciplined in that regard. Justin Simmons has been good in terms of getting interceptions, being in the right spot. Teams are going to try to throw away from Patrick Surtain a little bit. So, Fabian Moreau has been a guy that was tested, had an interception on Josh Allen. For them, I just think that their decision, their effort, their pursuit to the football, it's something they work on every day in practice when we get a watch. That has stood out to them, but they've just got this energy and this confidence with one another. They have trust. They're communicating a lot more, and they weren't communicating much at the beginning of the season, and that's why we were seeing a lot of big plays. So I think they've got their rhythm right now. They've got the formula that's working for them, and if they can find a way to stop the run, I think that they're going to be even better to close out the second half of the season, which makes, I think, the playoff race inside the AFC very, very interesting here down the stretch.
Cody, good stuff, man. We'll look forward to the game this Sunday. Check out Cody, Locked On Broncos podcast. We appreciate the time, man. Take care. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.